X-Men 97. I watched the whole thing. You just finished it today. Now let's talk before we get into the actual like meat and potatoes of this thing. What were your fears and expectations going into X-Men 97?
Oh, I thought this was going to be a woke dumpster fire.
Yeah,
Listen, I loved the OG show. I thought that their fealty to the source material, but their willingness to kind of change it up a little bit
right.
was a super strength of the show. But that was also, we had different sensibilities back then, and I was very worried that that a lot of this the false narrative of the X-Men are an allegory for or the that Magneto is Malcolm X and that Xavier is MLK. Siren, go away.
That your cat just like really is like the world must see my butthole. Like not the first person I've met in my life who that's been their motto. But
So I was worried it was going to take us down a path that was going to make it unfun.
right.
But I was very pleasantly surprised. I got a little worried, in the middle, with the Magneto is right stuff because
Right.
even without Xavier, the majority of the team, especially a character like Rogue, they are always idealistic and / optimistic first. But given the story route that they took, I was able to back up off it. But listen, it was executed almost flawlessly, and that's hard to come by. That is hard to come by.
You know what it reminded me of, and not like in terms of like content, but in terms of like the respect that was kind of given to the property. The DuckTales reboot.
No,
it reminded me of that.
Yep, that's an excellent point. Yeah, you could feel the love and the reverence for the storylines, for the characters, and they understood we had to get it right.
Right.
Let's see what happens with season 2. But
oh, hold on, we got a first guest joining in today. Our good friend Phil Marks from Pro Wrestle Times. Hey, Phil.
Yo, how you guys doing, man?
Hey,
Apollo, Marv, it's good to see you guys.
In. No, we would not be a good first episode of Tuning Talk TV without Phil Marks joining in.
Hey, man, thank you. I appreciate that.
We're talking X-Men 97. Phil, have you watched it?
Yes, I have. I've watched it all, actually, and I can give my thoughts after. I think Apollo was in the middle there, but I'll circle back to me in a second here.
I loved it, man. And seeing those 90s storylines play out, like for me, that was something that I was like, when they abruptly ended the show, I was like, dude, there's so much that we can get to. I was like, when are we going to get new members of the team again? Although Bishop was on the show, I liken Bishop to I can't think of his name, but you ever see Summer School Mark Harmon?
No, I never saw that.
There's this giant black dude who is in the summer school class with them. He's there for the first 20 minutes of the movie. He asks for a bathroom pass, and you don't see him again for the rest of the movie until they have to take this massive test. And then he shows up and it gets a perfect score. They're like, what happened to you? He just goes, oh, the stall was locked. So it's like he just served no purpose for the movie other than being this giant man. And then Bishop, oh, here, I'm a plot device. Peace. And then
I mean, he was in like the intro and everything too. So I was like, oh wow, they're really going all in on Bishop now. Like they always kind of like Bishop was kind of like X-Men adjacent in like the original run. But in this one, I'm like, oh wow, he's gonna be full on X-Men. And nope, he was just literally a plot device to get Nathan into the future. Which, by the way, I'm glad we finally like went into like Cable's backstory. So I'm gonna say the one thing that I did not like some of the voice actors that they brought back, because like Rogue does not has such a distinct voice, and I get you wanted to bring the originals back, and I respect the want to let these people continue voicing their characters, but Rogue did not sound like Rogue anymore. She sounds like a 90-year-old woman.
And same with Wolverine. Wolverine sounds like he was dug up from a fucking tomb in Egypt somewhere.
He sounded enough like Wolverine for me to be like, okay, I could still kind of get it. And like, that is my Wolverine voice.
Yeah, me too.
Right. That is the Marvel versus Capcom, X-Men versus Street Fighter. That is Wolverine. That is it just sounded like every time he had dialogue, they just woke him up.
Mm-hmm.
How do y'all feel? Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask, like, how do y'all feel about them? I don't know if you touched on it, 'cause I'm here a little bit late, but how do you guys feel about, like, so I don't know if you were getting to this, Marv, so sorry if I'm stepping on your wiener here, but they killed off, like, you know, it's seemingly Wolvie Berserk is gone and Gambit's gone, and it's like, damn, those are some drastic triggers they pulled there. Like, well,
I don't think Wolverine is gone. They just did the storyline when Magneto pulls the metal out of him.
Right, so he's going to be Bone Claw Wolverine.
Yeah,
he'll kick out of that.
Yeah, he'll go feral. He won't have a nose for a little bit, so that's there's like the pirate mask for a minute, and then Gambit. Well, the Gambit's fate is in a
spoilers, by the way, folks. If you haven't watched this yet,
I'm so sorry. Yeah,
well, although it's not confirmed, but Gambit does become a horseman. In some of the newer stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna. I was really more shocked. Like, they wiped out a lot of, like, I love Leech and Artie. Again, I'm old school, dude. I go all the way back. The original X Factor run was one of my favorite books to read. So like I was left like, Xavier's school was never really a school until we got to the Jim Lee era, where all of Scott's summer students moved into the mansion. You had the X-Men, and then you had the New Mutants. But there was probably 13 people living in a 150 person mansion. So it wasn't until Scott's students come over where the mansion gets fully turned into a school. So I was pissed they killed Leech. Leech is one of my favorite little side characters. I'm like, they killed
you help Leech. Leech help you.
And I was always pissed that it was never Leech and Artie, because it was always Leech and Artie, never just Leech.
I know. But you know who I think did survive, at least? The most important character on the entire show, I think, survived Genosha. And that was covered with scorpions. Covered with scorpions.
Covered with scorpions. Oh, covered with scorpions.
No! Covered with scorpions! Get them off me!
What are you doing to my head?
My favorite Morlock. I was like, please tell me she made it out.
Shout out to Morlocks, dude.
Oh, I love the Morlocks. Like, you keeping me from what is mine. I'm covered with scorpions. I loved that. Like, this absolute badass Wolverine just has an absolute panic attack because he thinks there's scorpions on him.
Do you guys keep up with the X-Men comic books at all? Like what they've done over the last handful of years?
Yeah, I jumped out when they became creepy pod people.
Yeah, so basically, like, Marvel right now, they're rebooting. They're kind of rebooting the X-Men, if you will.
Again?
And they have 3. Yeah, but so what happened was, for a long time, they were on Krakoa, which was like basically the mutants became like everything they wanted. They're like this elitist race of people that never die because they can always just be resurrected, and they just live on, like, mutants are just above everyone else, sort of, and live in their own utopia land where there's no real problems and there's nothing that's interesting. But since those books really sucked, sorry, not taking shots at anybody, but the books kind of sucked, not gonna lie. They're now launching 3 titles: X-Men, I think the Exceptional X-Men, and another one I'm forgetting, guys, but on like July 1st or June 1st, they're
the adequate X-Men.
The
exceptional
factor, right?
Yeah, you got the exceptional X-Men, you got the adequate X-Men.
Yeah. The capable X-Men. But
the passable X-Men.
Yeah, the passable X-Men. But yeah, they're sort of revamping it where You know, they have the ideas like Magneto is like a leader with Scott Summers, sort of what they're doing in the animated series, pardon me, and they're trying to sort of get some life and energy back behind X-Men, and I'm optimistic for it because I still like to read X-Men. So I don't know, guys. I just wanted to shout that out on the show. I guess we'll check that out.
Go ahead, Kev.
X-Men has been on the balls of their ass since Brian Michael Bendis came in and destroyed everything that was going on, man. During the
my god,
the No More Mutants was like just left the team in a death rattle forever, and then that fucking bastard had the audacity to come in and take the book, and it's like, yes, you're fine. The cool old OG5 running around time displace was neat for 5 minutes, and it's just like that guy he overstayed his welcome, destroyed that book. X-Men has been hurt for like
destroyed Marvel. Like he had that whole era where all it was just heroes fighting heroes.
That's it. That was his shtick, man. He destroyed the miniseries and the summer event, turned it into a 13 issue, 13 issue just for the trade. You know, like it was really, he took what was really like a 4-issue event, turned it to 13, made it boring, torture porn, killed a bunch of people, brought them back. It was brutal. And then he turned around and did it to Superman. But yeah, dude, it's like the X-Men have been hurting since like what?
Yeah.
Since 2000.
It's all Marvel, man. Like what did they do with Captain America? Like the real Captain America, turns out he's a Nazi, but then all of the heroes manifest.
Hail Hydra thing.
Manifest wished their idea of what Cap is. So now that's the real Cap. It's just all the heroes are like that now too. They're all it's tough, but I don't know. I'm optimistic about what they're doing with X-Men. If the animated series was any indication of their new relaunches they got coming, you know.
Did they really kill Beast? Did they really turn Hank and kill him?
Jeez, I don't know, man. Pardon me?
Speaking of Beast, in 97, see, I'm bringing it back to topic. He was one of the people that came back the voice actors came back, and he was actually really good.
I was Hank McCoy was one of my absolute favorite characters. You know, being the size of a house and as eloquent as I am, you know,
oh my god, we have to paint you blue.
Well, I used to love finding excuses to sneak in "Oh My Stars and Garters" in the promos.
I think I remember seeing that. Oh my stars and garters. God.
Indubitably, that's his other line. Yeah. I was gonna say Blueface is there's already someone who does that gimmick, but I don't know, that's a bad joke.
Disconcerting yet provocative. First super chat coming in. Miles Engelhart checking in with $6.99 Canadian, and he says opinion on the animation quality. Sometimes I loved it and sometimes I hate it. I actually really dug the animation. It was jarring at first, especially because, you know, the original animation, you're talking like Night of the Sentinels and a Magneto, Deadly Reunions, Cold Vengeance, you know. I only remember the titles of these episodes because I had the VHS tapes from Pizza Hut. But yeah, that animation was just spot on. And then, like, despite the fact that the show was the biggest thing in the world, somewhere in the 4th season, Haim Saban was like, we're spending too much money on this. We have to spend less money on this. Haim, it's bringing in all this money. Yeah, but imagine how much more money it brings in if we don't spend anything. So they outsourced to some like Korean studio, and that's why the animation got overly cartoony. Yeah, this was kind of like something between the two. I liked the way they moved. I really liked the flying mechanics. I thought Storm and Rogue looked great when they moved, like through the air.
I felt like it was like everything you loved about Flash animation, you know, back in the day. Like when like you found someone who could really do it well. I like the vibrant colors. Yeah, I agree. It was a little jarring at first. But you know, for the action sequences kicked ass. It was cool. It was cool. I felt like I think a comic a lot.
When I think of the animation for this show, my one thought was that final Gambit moment was beautiful.
Yeah.
Remember it? It was beautiful. I loved it. And by the way, so I'm gonna quote Nerdrotic here from Friday Night. I think it was on Friday Night Tights, or if it was on one of his other shows, but he said, and I could not agree more. What this show was, justice for Scott Summers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, especially if you're a comic book reader. We all know. Although the entire team has been getting their asses kicked in. My God, has Scott been eating shit sandwiches for at least the last 15 years.
Oh my God! In AVX, he was essentially a villain. Like I was livid when I read Avengers versus X-Men.
And it's just one of those, like, I never understood why Scott never got the love that like other leader characters got.
That Wolverine got.
Right.
And
Wolverine
in
got.
front of him and behind his back.
And Wolverine is never supposed to be a leader. Wolverine is the renegade. He's the lone wolf.
It's like, damn, man, like I loved Wolverine and the X-Men too, but like Wolverine is not a leader. Scott Summers, listen, Scott was worthless in the movies. Like, other than a couple of quick little quips in X2, what did he really do?
He said this. He went, Gene. That's what he did every movie.
and he had that wonderful line. What are you expecting? Yellow spandex? Which I love that they turned that on its head.
Yeah,
so
I love
Cable
that
was
they
like,
did
you
that in the
expect me to
series.
wear that? And he's like, what were you expecting? Black leather? I have to say, one thing I have to say is so they did, obviously Cyclops didn't come back. I think the voice actor actually might have passed away. But the guy they got to play him, he didn't sound like Scott, but he got the inflection of Scott. And that's like a thing that I always say, like when people talk to me about voices, like the voices that I do on Tooneytown and stuff like that, it's like you don't have to match the tone. You mostly just have to get in the ballpark of the tone, but you have to match the cadence of how they sound.
And like pick up on a nuance that like maybe other people, like, it's just picking up on like the little subtleties of, that's why there can be a million funny different Donald Trump impressions, let's say, even though that got hacky and played out. But it's like Alec Baldwin's was so good because there was just little nuances, because you could tell like he knows, he's probably hung out with Donald Trump, so he's picked up on little things, So that I agree with you fully there about that. And like you brought up the voices, because I was sitting there going, like, I'm looking on X, I'm like, am I the only one whose these voices are just not exactly that? It was jarring for a second, and especially if you watch the previous stuff catching up. And to the super chat question as well, like with the animation style, like if you rewatch the original series to sort of refresh before you came into 97, all of it's going to sort of be a little jarring. It's all going to come across a little weird at first, but once you ease in, like by the end of episode 1, I was like, all right, if they keep more of this will be really good. And it followed through, man, and I was really impressed with all of it.
The other one, and somebody in the chat just pointed it out, I do look at the chat here and there, folks. The way to guarantee that your stuff gets read is to send a super chat. But they said the Storm's voice actress returned, and man, justice for her, because she was terribly written in the original. She was so dry, and like the cringy episode with the Shadow King where everything was Mishnari. Like she was awesome.
Old school Storm used to cut a 45-minute promo to use her powers, and it kicked ass every time. My uncle, may he rest. I love him dearly. He was a openly gay man, and Storm was his spirit animal. Every time Storm spoke to use her powers, he would stand up and cheer. It was just legit cheer. Lightning. What was it? I call upon the forces of nature. Heed my call. Dude, come on, fucking awesome.
As like I remember as like a 7-year-old, we used to like make jokes like at school about how like Storm is like, Arctic winds, heed my call, come to me. And by that point in time, like Sabretooth has just like walked away.
He's left. It's like watching the Power Rangers change. You're just like, what am I supposed to do?
No,
here?
She was great in this series. Like her writing was on point. I love that they gave her the mohawk. I liked the dynamic with her and Jean.
And then it changed at the end when she powered up. Then the long locks, the long white hair came back.
The classic costume, the Pride of the X-Men costume.
Right. And I like that they did that with everybody. They went very old school. So they gave us a little nostalgia from just like the 90s look. And then they went, oh yeah, here's some even more nostalgia for you right there with the 60s look or whatever.
We got our Burn Claremont costumes. I mean, again, chef's kiss, man. It was a very needed love letter to these characters. Especially with we don't know what their MCU future is. I'm not super thrilled with the writer that they picked, the guy who the guy who gave us that awful Assassin's Creed movie and then adapted.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, it's the guy who adapted Assassin's Creed /
if I may on that, Marvel's had a hard time locking in like their first, second. Not like I'm not trying to shit on anybody, but I'm just letting y'all know that like they're not. People aren't chomping at the bit to work on that stuff lately, which it used to be the opposite. And the people like really campaigning to get in the MCU is like Lindsay Lohan now and shit. You know what I mean? We're at that point now, guys. So I don't really just I know that's not the ideal writer, but
that's a good segue to what I wanted to talk about with the show. Next is actually before that, they actually did Jubilee justice.
Oh yeah, she was great. I just wanted to say though on the Storm thing quickly, I don't like how the one thing I was kind of bored with the whole her little side quest. Not bored, but the way they split those episodes up. Like Storm's little side quest just should have been one full episode, and then the video game stuff and with Jubilee and the other half of the other episode, you guys know what I'm talking about. That should have all been one episode, or the whole video game thing with Jubilee should have just been one episode. But that's nitpicking. But yes, dude, Jubilee, who when I was growing up, I loved Jubilee, dude. I loved her. And this was that was another highlight for me as well.
That is Mrs. Movie Monster's favorite X-Men, so she was very excited about that. Also, you gotta look at the what we were just saying with Storm's little. I don't like things when people lose their powers. Like the cool thing is to watch you use your powers. I don't want to see you. The only time it ever worked for me was the first Thor movie. That was the first time that I ever liked like the super. Like there's rumors that when Superman and Lois comes back because they had no budget this year, like he's just gonna lose his powers from the Doomsday fight and just have no power until like late in the season. And I'm like, please God, let that just be a rumor.
The only thing I would say is they adapted that marvelously from the comics.
Yeah,
pretty much. It was like pretty much shot for shot. It was just being an old school comic fan. And seeing it play out, I thought that everything about her story arc was awesome. The only thing that I was disappointed with is that during that story for her, that's where we get introduced to Gambit. Is while she's on that quest to kind of get her powers back. The thing I love the most is they took all these stories that are all kind of happening around the same time, and they we end up with the X-Men being dead. Well, in the middle of this story, like we think the X-Men are dead. We think like there's only a handful that are surviving. Storm is powerless, trying to get her powers back. She meets Gambit. X-Factor thinks that the main team is dead. The Kitty and Nightcrawler wind up over in England, and that's where you get the Excalibur team. And then it's during the massive fight with the Shadow King where all the teams come together. And then when Xavier loses the use of his legs, they go, okay, let's go home. And then boom, you get the awesome Jim Lee gatefold cover of what's to come. And and it's like, oh. By the way,
just how many times has Charles Xavier gotten his legs back and then lost them again?
Well, so
like the poor guy, every time he gets to walk again, he's like the clock's just ticking until I'm paralyzed again.
It's not entirely his fault. So the original Professor X that we meet dies. He gets infected by the Brood, and the Xavier that replaces him is a clone that gets his brain. That's why that Professor X could walk, because he didn't have the spinal injury. Right. Then later, Shadow King breaks his back, and then he loses his legs again. And then for some reason he gets them back again, and then he loses them again.
There is like there's an episode of Family Guy where they do like a series of like I think it's like the Stephen King one where in every story Joe gets paralyzed.
Yes.
I think that's what I imagine with this. One leap in logic that I did want to point out. Okay, let's say you're Magneto, right? You are the arch nemesis of the X-Men. Now,
Right.
the X-Men have this feral, murdering beast with knives that come out of his hands. He is a massive threat to everyone they fight, except for you. For you, this guy is not a problem because he is essentially made of the thing that you control. Okay? Why would you rip that thing out of him?
Well, originally,
Because it looks cool, Marv. Okay.
I know, but
when we get to during that desperate fight in Fatal Attractions, Wolverine does go to kill him, and Magneto when the Burn team first fights Magneto, they get their asses kicked. Wolverine runs up like a badass, and Magneto's like, "Your bones are made of metal," and he makes Wolverine, "Why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself?" Like, so it's like Wolverine has never really been a problem for Magneto outside of what Magneto was willing to allow. And then the one time Wolverine got a little too ballsy, Magneto's like, "Okay, now you fucked around. Now it's time to find out." And it was just the one big extreme thing. You're like, "Why did you do this? You almost killed him." And again, look at it. It played out just like how it played out in the
you almost killed him back when like it was possible to kill Wolverine before we had him like get blown up and that like to a skeleton and then come back from it. Where I'm like, okay, so he's just immortal now. I don't.
For everybody's frame of reference, if you're going to ask me about superheroes, generally, I will defer to their power, their pre 2006 power levels.
Right, right. You have to when we're referring to comics. Yeah, exactly. Or like, you have to, because people will say that like, "Oh, well, Ironheart was a thing in Marvel." What, you don't read comics? It's like, yeah, I know. 10 years ago, they had this shitty book nobody read. I know. Yeah, sure, he was Black Panther for a while. I know nobody read that shit though. So we're not talking about that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
like, my Wolverine can die. He's not going to regenerate from a drop of blood. Like,
and like at the end of the day, you had that classic scene from Days of Future Past when the Sentinel blows him away and he's just the skeleton left.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. So there needs to be an element of danger. I have never been one. I hate when writers are very free with killing characters. To me, it's very lazy. But you have to be able to put your heroes in peril. The point of me reading this book is, how is the guy going to or girl going to escape the danger you put them in? And the thing I didn't like was, like, if you ever watch like the old noirs or the old like the Dick Tracy shorts, and like, he gets beat up and like they push the car off the cliff and then somehow they survived. That's lazy. That's lazy. But like when you give me the setup of, he's tied up and the car is going down the hill and you're watching him work his way out of the ropes, and then show me how he did it. Don't give me the don't give me the magical MacGuffin. Let's work it. Let me see you work it through.
At this point, we've hit the point where it's somehow Wolverine returned.
Yeah, no, that's it. So hopefully whenever we get to season 2, we get the cool noseless Wolverine. And then
I wouldn't hold your breath on that one.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I'm assuming because Apocalypse showed up at the end, which was the only voice I was disappointed with. I missed the reverbing,
Apocalypse. I love Apocalypse's voice.
All
who oppose me.
I'm deeply saddened that we lost the Magneto voice actor.
I know.
God, is there any one man with so much gravitas and weight in his voice?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I love it with Apocalypse. My favorite line: "I am as far from mutants as they are from you." It just, every line was epic. Mystique plays you very well, Mr. Worthington. Just so good. But there's one plot hole that I need them to close, by the way, and it involves Cable. Remember how Cable in the first season is just like in Genosha, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's like a freedom fighter, like who's mad at the leader." I'm like, no, he's from the damn future. And enough with non X-Men showing up in their X-Men costume with the X on their costume.
I know.
I'm done with that.
Well, they didn't they showed how he is like from the future in 97 though. And then I just wanted to ask,
we eventually got there with the technovirus, which again, when baby Nathan got infected with the technovirus, I was like, guys, we've dealt with this before. We understand what needs to happen. Just kick Wolverine into it.
Well, I'll give them this. Hank did make it a point to say that the virus was much more advanced than what they'd seen before, and it would take him months to get to the cure, which they didn't have for Nathan. And then we got to see Future Cable in the oh god, what was the name of the final apocalypse story? That was almost the same finale. Was it Beyond Good and Evil?
The huge one.
The
I know what you're talking about, but we saw Future Cable before that. We saw him in the Technovirus one. Where he comes back.
So like okay, so obviously him, you have Bishop, Forge. I'm not trying to, but season 2, let's think this out here. Who's going to show up, right? Like Iceman, Havoc. Who hasn't?
I would like to see both of those.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
if you've ever felt useless in your life, just thank God that you're not Nightcrawler in this show.
Yeah,
because he did nothing.
But you know what? I will get, other than
that fight scene.
The fight with him and Wolverine and kicking the crap out of the Alpha Sentinels, that was awesome.
Yeah,
they handled Kurt's powers excellently. It made me long for we haven't actually gotten it for real in the comics, but it made me long for that. What would it look like if Spider-Man fought Nightcrawler? Because both of their agility, they should not be able. It should be a fight where no one actually hits anybody.
Yeah.
Fräulein, Kurt Wagner from the Munich Circus. That's a little French, sorry.
How about like in Pride of the X-Men when he's like real creepy to Kitty? Fräulein, you left before I could properly welcome you. And like, no wonder she's like screaming in your face. All right.
This little Jewish girl is being interrogated by this German fella she doesn't know.
This German blue devil. Liger J81. Checking in $5. He said this. Thank you so much. This series also gave a lot of love toward the 90s video games, Marvel vs. Capcom, Children of the Atom, etc. Absolutely.
Dude, one of my favorite things was in the Jubilee episode, the little homage to the Mutant Apocalypse SNES cartridge. I played the shit out of that game. I was like, wait, there's a secret ending. I'm playing this game until I get it. I don't know what you had to do to get it. It's like the only difference is like when Asteroid M explodes, instead of it just ending, they're like, you did a good job. The Blackbird flies back to the mansion, and you get a group shot of the entire team.
Yeah, and I miss calling it the Blackbird. Thank God we're back to calling it the Blackbird because I hate the X-Jet.
Yeah, what was it? The X-Jet for so long.
The X-Jet.
It's the Blackbird. We all had the toy.
And also, I think there was like a couple references or sort of teases, if you will, of like Onslaught. So speaking of Marvel versus Capcom, so I don't know, just throwing that out there.
By the way, I see guys that there's some more super chats. I'm gonna get to them because they're off topic. So I want to close down this topic first before we get to that.
Sorry guys, marking up for the X-Men and all. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've been.
But can I just point out one thing though? It is we have gotten Jubilee, Rogue, Storm, female characters in the Marvel Universe presented in this show, and it was wonderful. Jean too. You know, with the exception of when Jean randomly phoenixed out and then couldn't do it again. Madeline was, but this show gave you female characters who just happened to be women who were amazing all around characters, and they didn't shove it down your throat. They didn't have any like, they should call this team the X-Women because the women are always saving the men. Like, there was none of that pandery bullshit that they became so famous for. But now my question to you guys, is it too little, too late?
I will say I think so. The ratings for the show.
Yeah, I was going to point that out now. It's
that. Listen, as much as we all love it, no one watched it.
An article from our friends over at thatpocplace.com. You guys should check them out on check out the site, check out the YouTube, also WW Pro. A new report reveals that X-Men 97 performed worse than the first season of Marvel Studios animated series What If. What
And
If
listen,
was like
well, sorry, I was
ahead,
just going to say, what if the first season was solid?
Yeah.
Season 2, I can't even
Awful.
get through. I've shut it off probably 4 or 5 times. This show, I saw in the chat, someone's like, this show had X-Men 97 had no business being as good as it was, and I fully agree. I did not even expect it to be as good as it was. It was people who took it seriously, but it's like, not to bring it to wrestling. That's my gimmick, though. It's like AEW, dude. It's too much. It's lost faith now. Like with the MCU, like what this show isn't going to do anything to make people go, oh, I want to go see the MCU now. Like the live action, so it's not going to do anything for that. Maybe like they tease now. We talked about the series on it. We didn't bring up how, you know, they showed Daredevil, they showed Hulk, they showed Cap and Iron Man. So we might get those series now. I think, Marv, I saw you tweet out a while back. You're like, I don't want to see all these other series. I fucking love Spider-Man, especially. I was a big
Spider-Man I want to see. Spider-Man is the one that I want, but we do not need to revisit Iron Man or Silver Surfer.
See, I loved that Iron Man show, but so maybe I'm the only one, but the other thing is that we got the Daredevil series was supposed to spin off of that Spider-Man one. We never got it. I'm a mark as a kid. I'd love to see an animated Daredevil, especially if they're doing what they did with X-Men 97.
I tell everybody, don't sleep on the Marvel Action Hour. Ignore the first season for both shows and just go straight to season 2. The Fantastic Four John Byrne run is one of the greatest.
I love that. I love
greatest cartoon adaptations ever, and the fact that it kind of helped launch the Hulk cartoon, tremendous. The Iron Man, the reboot of Iron Man, where they should have just called it the Avengers Coast. I understand why they didn't want to do it.
They had Scarlet Witch and everybody in it.
The reboot of the Iron Man season 2 was tremendous. Especially spending the majority of the season dealing with a very cleverly a demon in a bottle without him being an alcoholic.
Right.
Effing brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
I was legitimately shocked that the Mandarin wasn't actually green when I first picked up a comic book.
Man, those shows are like what? I don't know. I'm down if they bring all those. I'm down if they do a whole animated universe, as long as they don't. Like the MCU would still be good if it wasn't so. It just got lazy and whatnot. Like we all know what happened. Okay, we all know what happened. But that initial run of the
Victoria
MCU,
Alonso is what happened. Yeah.
The animated, if they do the same thing, awesome. Just don't flub it up and don't start doing all this weird shit and trying to make me care about characters like Ironheart in the middle of Black Panther 2. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? So
I barely gave a shit about Black Panther.
Don't let Feige get off easy, because he's the one who brought out all this bullshit. Without the Russos and Favreau to carry
this needs to be addressed, man.
Feige is.
Sorry, I was just making it sounded bad. It sounded bad before. I was going to say I didn't give a shit about Black Panther 2 to begin with, because it didn't have Black Panther in it.
That's it.
The Russos and James Gunn, though. The Russos and James Gunn, like they did so much. James Gunn did so much behind the scenes, planning out like a decade worth of Marvel stuff with them and giving them just his thoughts, like by proxy of just working alongside them. So Kevin Feige, like, although he's great, he's not surrounded by.
He's not great.
Okay, well, he's not, but like, you know, he doesn't have the Russos and Gunn and all of those people.
Yeah.
Really sort of steering the ship and making sure and putting ideas in his head. Like there was someone clearly in the middle of that spider web keeping it all cohesive for a long time, and I do believe that's Feige. Like I do believe that.
Feige got the benefit of watching and learning from where Avi Rad failed, right? Because he was there with him the whole time. So he gets his education from Richard Donner. He sees High Siren. He sees Avi Rad.
I'm gonna start calling your cat Aubrey Edwards, because she just keeps hot dogging in front of the camera.
He gets to see where Avi Rad blows it with Spider-Man 3. And he got to learn from those mistakes. But Jon Favreau, we all forget Jon Favreau did all the heavy lifting for the early part of what was going to become Phase 1. And it isn't until they force him to turn Iron Man 2 into a glorified commercial is where they lose him. And at that point, You had the Russos already, already in the already in the queue. You had Whedon, already developing Avengers. So after that, it was easy. It was an easy handoff. It was he didn't have much to do. All he had to do was nod and say, "Okay, sounds good to me." And we saw what Kevin Feige, without the appropriate support team, is going to give us, and it hasn't been good.